sort of like links. Skåne has been part of Denmark, and after that it was a big war for many, many, many years. So we are connected in all kinds of ways. But Anna, I'm very pleased that you will join in for this duet and be the substitute, the Nordic substitute for Linda, who was not able to be here today. We are going to tell stories. Maybe sing a song. We don't know. I don't know what's going to happen because I have an idea that I think that you actually know what's going to happen in the beginning, because it is like this in the duet. You as a guest start with a story. Then hopefully I will be inspired to do some kind of a story or a song, whatever I want to do. And then hopefully that will inspire you. And that's the end of this duet. So 3 stories, songs, poems, whatever we want to do. So that's what's going to happen first, is that I'm going to mute myself and you have all the possibilities in the world to tell a story, whatever you want. Here we go.
Thank you. Yes, you asked me to tell something Nordic, and I asked you Norse or folklore or what? And you said, yeah, something, but of your choice. And I was thinking about this Nordic thing. What is Nordic? This dress that is kind of Nordic design with some kind of folklore inspiration, or this bracelet that is a Sami handicraft. Yes, it is. And I don't know, what is Nordic? I mean, this necklace comes from a designer here in Malmö. She's an immigrant from Hungary, but it is made here, so it's Nordic. And I think that's the same thing with many of our stories. And I know that the Vikings traveled a lot, and we have recently learned from archaeologists that the Vikings were not blonde and blue-eyed. They were mixed because they traveled everywhere and they mixed with everyone. And a lot of Vikings lived here that were not blue-eyed because they had traveled here from other countries. So I don't know about this story, but I know that it was written down here in Skåne by Eva Wikström. And Eva Wikström, she collected stories from around Skåne. She was a farmer's daughter. And she almost didn't get an education because her father thought that that was unnecessary for girls, but she had a brother. And that brother taught her a lot of things. And she was really interested in culture and language. And she was friends with Grundtvig, I think the younger Grundtvig. And they were starting to investigate these things. What is similar in Skåne and Denmark? Because, as you said, Skåne belonged to Denmark for a while, and then now it belongs to Sweden. So can you see that in the stories? I don't know about this particular story, but here it comes. Once upon a time, there was a girl, and she was beautiful. And I even think she was the only child of a rich farmer. So she had a lot of suitors. And she didn't really like any of them. And she said, I will only marry a man with red hair and red beard, because that's the most beautiful color I know. And none of those suitors, of course, had red hair or red beard. But one day, a man came, and he had the most beautiful coppery red hair and beard, and he was tall and handsome, and he looked strong in his build. He looked like he was a good worker, but he also seemed very nice and polite, and he proposed to her. So now all of her friends were, ha ha ha, here he is, so now you have to get married. And she said, I guess I have to get married. So they were engaged. And every Sunday, her new fiance came to visit her. And they had very nice talks and had a good time, and all her family started to like her. And one day he said, I always visit you. Don't you want to come and see where I live? I mean, that is the place where you are going to live after we are married, right? Yes, of course I want to see where you live, she said, but I don't know where you live. Oh, it is a bit difficult, he said, because I live in the forest and it's quite far. But if you find the big meadow with a big oak tree, and then I will put a piece of rope between the trees all the way, and you can follow the rope all the way to my house. So see you next Sunday. Yes, she said. And she was happy that she was finally going to see his home. But when Sunday came, she was busy, and she had no way to tell him or somehow go and see him. And she was very sad. But the next day she was free. So she decided to go that day instead. She went to the meadow with the big oak tree, and she found the rope that was tied to the next tree, and she followed the rope into the forest, and it was really far, and she was very thankful for that rope. But when she had walked for a long while, she came to a clearing, and in that clearing was a beautiful little white house. And the roses were climbing on the wall, and there was a water well in the middle of the yard. And oh, she thought, oh, my fiancé has such a beautiful home. I will be happy here. And she went and knocked on the door, and an old woman opened. And the old woman said, what are you doing here, my girl? Why are you here in the middle of the forest? I'm here to meet my fiancé. I'm going to marry him and I'm going to live here. Do you not know who your fiancé is? He is a robber and murderer, and he lives here with his band of robbers, and you should leave now before he comes back and sees you. Because if he knows that you know who he is, he will not let you live. The girl was really scared, and she said, okay, thank you very much. I will leave now. But then they heard noises, loud male voices coming from the other side of the forest. And the woman said, if you go now, they will see you and they will know, and they will not let you come home in one piece. Come inside, you have to hide here. When they are asleep, I will let you go out. And the girl went inside and she hid under a bed in this little house. And she could hear how all the men came inside and they were happy, they were laughing, they had had a good day. And she could also see from under the bed how they were pulling the dead body of a young woman. And that young woman had nice clothes and nice jewelry, and they were just taking all these clothes off, and they were taking all the jewelry off her. And on one of her fingers, she had a ring, a beautiful golden ring, and they couldn't take it off. It was stuck. So she saw her fiancé with all his red hair bend down, take the hand, put it, what do you call that thing where you chop wood? It doesn't matter. That's where he put the hand, and he took the axe and he chopped off the finger, and the finger flew down under the bed where the girl was hiding. And she crept into the shadows in the corner, and they started looking. She saw the hands looking everywhere, and then she heard the old woman say, Don't bother about that now. Come and eat. The food is ready and it's going to be cold. So those hands disappeared. The finger lay in front of the girl on the floor. And with some hesitation, she took that finger and she put it in her pocket with the ring still on it. And she heard all the robbers. They were eating, they were laughing, they were telling stories about all the things that they had done, all the deeds that they have been doing when they were robbing and killing and murdering. And they sang horrible songs with horrible lyrics. She had never heard such things before, but she also heard them drinking and getting more and more drunk. And it wasn't long before she heard snoring from one after the other. And they were all over the floor and the table and the chairs everywhere, snoring. And then the old woman came and bent down under the bed. And the girl crawled out quietly and she started walking after the old woman. Suddenly, one of the robbers woke up and got hold of her dress. And she was stuck. It was pitch dark because no lights were on. But the old woman said, "Let go of me, I have to go outside and do my business." So the robber just let her go and continued snoring. And in the end, the girl got out of the door and she found the rope and she followed the ropes all the way home. She was quite shook up, but she was safe. The next Sunday, her fiancé came and he said, "I missed you. Why didn't you come?" "Oh, I'm so sorry. I was busy. My cousin had a baby and I had to help. And I was really, really sad that I couldn't come. I was so sad that I actually had a dream. I had a dream about your house. I dreamt that I went to the meadow with the oak tree. And I dreamt that I found the rope that you had tied there. That was so thoughtful of you." "Oh, dreams," he said. "Dreams flow like streams." "Yes, and I found your house and it was a beautiful little white house with the roses climbing on the wall and the well in the yard, and it was so nice and I was so happy and I was so proud that this was my fiancé." "Yeah, dreams," he said. "Dreams flow like streams." And then I knocked on the door and an old woman opened the door and she said, "What are you doing here? You shouldn't be here. Your fiancé is a robber and murderer. And if he finds out that you know who he is, he's going to kill you." Dreams, dreams flow like streams. And then I had to go inside and hide under the bed. And I heard you and all the robbers come inside. And I saw that you were carrying the corpse of a young woman. And I saw you chop the finger off her to get the ring off. Dreams, dreams flow like streams. Yes, and then that finger flew in under the bed where I was hiding. And here it is. And all of her family, they reacted immediately. Her fiancé didn't have even time to get up to try to run out of the house. No, they were all holding him down. And then they sent a message for the justice and they went inside the forest and they took all the robbers and they were all convicted and hanged. But the little old woman that had helped the girl, she came to live with the girl because her family were very grateful that she had saved her life. And after that, this girl was a little bit more careful when she put up criteria for who she wanted to marry.
Thank you, Anna. What's her name again? Eva Wix?
Eva Wikström.
Yeah. She was a collector of stories down in the south.
Yes.
Yeah. Wonderful
Very
story.
nice.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's
And
very
with a
scary.
poem, I like these repeatedly poems, these words. Ah, dream a dream, it's like a stream. Just, I love those kind of repetitive patterns that you just have in a story. So, inspired by that, I'm going to tell you about a woman. And this woman lived in the suburban town not far from Copenhagen. And she was newly, she wasn't divorced. She was separated from her husband. And she was waiting for the papers to arrive, the divorce papers. And she was alone in the big house. This was a big, big house. You know, they had a son and a daughter, so they, of course, had to have one room each and a playing room, game and above. So that was quite a big house. They were quite rich, wealthy family. But he had found himself a secretary about, 20 years younger than her and gone with her and bought an apartment into town. And the two kids were really happy with staying there because Copenhagen is more lively than the suburban areas and all that. So she was all by herself and miserable, really in a sad place. The washing machine was in the basement. And one of the things that she hated of being married to this man was that he constantly had something in his pockets, of something metal. There was always something from a screw or from a nail, whatever it was. There was always the sound when the clothes were going around in the washing machine, and she just hated it. But she thought that when he finally left her, actually she could be without that sound, but she couldn't because this was the boy who had something in his pocket. But she went down to the washing machine and she was now getting desperate. I mean, she wanted to stop the washing machine. She couldn't do it. And then she just turned around in desperation, nearly with tears of anger in her face. And then she saw the squirrel. And yet, a red squirrel, just because the Danish squirrels are often red, and this one was a red squirrel. And this squirrel was sitting on a trunk, like there was, her husband had cut it off and supposed to make some kind of a bird thing with food and stuff. It never got to that point, but the trunk was there, and then the squirrel was sitting on that, eating something. And you know how it is with squirrels. It's hard not to smile, right? They're so cute and nice, and all her anger was sort of, a squirrel. That's a sign. Maybe there's something good waiting for me. And then she made a movement, and the squirrel turned around, and she saw what it was eating, and it was a bird, a dead bird, and it was like a bird, a young bird, and it was just eating it. They're eating from the head, and the woman just screamed of horror. And then there was a sound of the bell. Ding dong. She ran upstairs, still with this picture of the squirrel eating a bird, and she opened it. And outside stood the postman. And the postman was a very young man with red hair, really strong red hair, like, those kind of the hair that you cut very, very short, and there's tight all the way down. And it reminded her of the squirrel, but in a good way. And his green eyes was smiling to her. He was a kind soul, definitely. He was just standing there with a letter, and he was from a lawyer, and she just looked at his hair, and took the letter, had signed it because she had to, because it was that kind of a letter from a lawyer, put it down, and then she said, "Don't you think that squirrels are nice animals?" and he did like this with his hair and said, "Oh, I remind you of a squirrel." Yeah, sure. I only have 1 minute for you, because we are not supposed to talk to our customers, but I can give you 1 minute, and then I have to run because the post have to be out, you know. What is it you're asking me about? Well, have you any thoughts about if you think of a squirrel, isn't that a nice animal? Gentle animal. I think you're right, he said. 1 minute. Thank you so much. And then he left, and she was standing there looking at him as he went on his bike, and you know, they have motors on the bike now, you know, they just. But something had happened. Something inside of her changed. She didn't care about that letter with the divorce papers. She just opened the door and locked it and went out for a walk and met some neighbors, talked to them, walked up the hill to the forest and back again, looked at the lake, and had a very, very nice morning. And as she came back to the house, he was standing there waiting for her. And she was quite surprised. 1 minute? No, I'm finished. I've done all the things. We can talk now. But I was just thinking about what you said. If a squirrel is a good animal, how do you know? I mean, what is it that makes a good animal? Is an elephant a good animal because it's big? A giraffe? Is a horse a good animal? Nice, kind animals. What is that? And if you have the smallest animals, you know, the ant and the mosquitoes, maybe even the Scottish midgets are kind animals when it comes to the end of it. I was just thinking about it. Thank you so much, and have a lovely weekend. It was Saturday, so he. And as she looked at this red hair, I thought about the squirrel. How is it that you can get a postman to come back to your house, Anna? Ordering something online. That's a very good idea. Another way is actually to send yourself a letter, because then you have to come to your house. So she started doing that. All that month, she was just ordering all kinds of things, and he came, and they started talking, and 1 minute, and all that. And one point, it was quite strange. He came with a packet, a little packet, and he said, "There's something strange going on with this, because I can easily see that it's actually you who has sent this packet to yourself. That's just a little bit strange." And she said, "It's not really for me, it's actually for you." And then she opened it, and inside was a little squirrel, a plastic squirrel that you can have, you know, hanging to your keys. And she had painted the green eyes on that. And he looked at her, and he did the right thing. He didn't say anything. He just kissed her once. A very, very gentle kiss, like butterfly wings, just. And then he said, 1 minute, and turned around and left.
Wow. That was a love story. And I was just still in this horror mood.
Yeah. Yeah, but it was in the moment you said that about the red hair, I just go, oh, I have this. Yeah, it's true.
Yes. And how would you ever know if someone is nice or not?
Yeah, exactly.
Because she couldn't know who he was. But yeah, that's interesting. And now I'm thinking what to tell you.
We can just keep the conversation going, and then suddenly
Yeah.
it hits you.
Yes, I have a story in my head, and that story will still be in like the horror mode. But it's also Nordic. But I don't actually know from where. I think it exists in many places. I think this is not a story. It's kind of not a legend, but it's a tale that I think people have been telling many places. We have a woman again. All our stories here have started with a woman, and this is also a woman, and this woman is older. So first we had a very young one, and then we had a little bit older one, and this one is even older. And she lived alone, not divorced, but because she was never married. And she had a little cottage very close to the church in the village, and that made her really happy because she really loved her religion and her church, and she was really proud that she always went to church and she always listened carefully to all the sermons, and she did her best to really learn what the priest told her. On the most important day of the year is Christmas morning. And I don't know about other countries, but in Sweden, there has been a tradition for many, many years, maybe many centuries, to have a sermon on Christmas morning really, really early. It's called julutta. And you have it when it's still dark outside, because in the middle of the winter in Sweden, most places are dark, almost more than half the day. And in some places in Sweden, it's dark all day round. It's perpetual night through the winter. And at Christmas, it is exactly like that. So this woman perhaps lived in the middle of Sweden because it would go light. But now it was dark. And she was really afraid that she wouldn't wake up in time for the Christmas morning sermon. So she went to bed really early on Christmas Eve. And then she woke up in the middle of the night. You know, the way you wake up when you feel that you have overslept, that you are missing something, that you are too late. She woke up like that. She was just like pulled out of bed by herself. And she didn't take any time. She just looked out the window and she could see that the lights in the church were on. Light came through the windows, and she felt they have already started and I am late. That's so embarrassing. Everyone is going to know that I am too late. So she didn't bother to get dressed. She had her nightgown and she took her winter coat and she put her feet in her winter boots. And she ran out of her door and over the churchyard. And she was in such a hurry. She didn't look left or right. She just looked at the big church door. And it was really heavy. But she managed to open that handle really, really, really quietly. And the big, big door really quietly. And she snuck inside and she closed it without a sound. She was really proud of herself for that. And she could see that the church was full of people, and there up, the priest was already starting to tell his sermon. And she could see that he was really serious. You know, usually the sermon on Christmas morning is a joyful one. It's a happy one because we come with a message of peace and happiness. He looked really serious and she didn't recognize him. She thought, what happened? Maybe our other priest is free or gone away or sick. But she had to find a place to sit. And the only place to sit was in the front row. That was the only free seat. So she had to go up the aisle, and everyone was going to see her, that she was late. Her heart was still pounding from running. And she walked with her head down because she couldn't face anyone. And she sat down. And when her heart slowed down a little bit, she started to try to listen. But then she felt a very strange smell. The church didn't smell warm or sweaty or something like it should when it was full of people. No, it smelled like dirt and soil and mold and something rotten. And it was really cold. Not the warmth of 100 people inside of the church or all the candles lit. No, it was cold. She didn't even want to unbutton her coat. Not that she wanted to unbutton it because everyone would see that she was in her nightgown, but she sat there and suddenly she felt a knock on her shoulder. And she turned around and saw her grandfather. She knew that it was her grandfather because she had actually seen him in a picture. But he had died before she was born. And he said, "Oh, my girl, my little wee girl, you are too early. You are not in the Christmas sermon for the living. You have come to the Christmas sermon for the dead. And if the dead realize that you are here, that there is a living soul among them, they will tear you to pieces. Do as I say. Unbutton your coat. Get up quietly and walk down the aisle slowly, calmly, and quietly. Don't look up. Don't scream, and don't run." Now her heart started running again. But she did what her grandfather did, even if she didn't understand any of it. She unbuttoned her coat, she got up, and she started walking back down the aisle. Don't look, don't scream, don't run, don't look, don't scream, don't run. But she couldn't. Her curiosity took over, and she started looking a little bit to the sides, and she saw old, broken clothes hanging over bones and rotten flesh. And she was even more curious. So she looked up straight into the empty eye sockets of a skull. And she screamed. And she started running. And she could hear the rattling of all the bones in all of the seats, how the dead came up and started following her. And she ran, and she ran. And when she was at the door, that big, heavy door, and she was just holding on to the handle, she felt how they grabbed her coat, and she was stuck. Luckily, she had unbuttoned it, and she could just let go of her coat, run through the door, run over the churchyard, run home and slam her own door. And I don't know if she even put some furniture in front of the door. And then she crept into bed and she put the cover over her head, and she stayed there until the darkness was gone and the day shone through, so that she could see that there was no more darkness. And the next day she learned from the caretaker of the church, when he had come in the Christmas morning to light the candles and take care of the church, to prepare it for the sermon for the living, he had found a little piece of the woman's coat on each of the seats. The dead had divided it between them. And the woman understood that she was really lucky to have escaped. Now I don't hear you. Did you? Your
I've
sound.
turned off this.
Oh,
Yeah,
oh,
here it is.
now I hear you.
But you're in a tough mode today. You sort of give it hard energy. Wow, that was a great story. Thank you so much for that one. Do you know Rabbi Burns? Have you heard of him? The Scottish national poet.
Yes.
Tam O'Shanter is a story about how a drunken man passes the church. He's on his way home. And then there's a ceremony, and there the devil is playing the bagpipe. Can you just imagine the devil playing the bagpipe? And there are all kinds of things going on with women, especially women with a short dress, showing the legs and everything, and they're going like, hey, whoa, food. There's so much going on in that church, and he's just standing by the window, and he can't help it. I can't remember what he's saying, but it's a shout on behalf of these women. It's, well done, short dresses. And in that moment, the light goes out. Everybody starts to run against him, and he has to flee from the scene on his horse. Meg, I think it's called Maggie. And then devils and dead people can't cross a river. So he saved his life by passing the river over the bridge. But they grab the horse, tail of the horse, and pull it out. It's actually pulled from the horse. It breaks. And then when he comes home, his wife doesn't believe him. It's go, oh, what are you talking about? But then she goes out and sees that the horse had that tail. The rest is gone, and just somebody's. But great story, Anna. Thank you so much. You jumped in being the substitute for Linda, and thank you for that. You really did it. How are you feeling now?
Yeah, I'm good.
It's quite fun, right?
Yes, it is. This version of DuEt was really so much fun. It was more fluid and fluent and dynamic.
Yeah, has to be like this, definitely. But so thank you so much, Anna, and see you soon.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Take care.